I've got Caitlyn Neuendorf with me. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, what made you get into what you do, and then what you specialize in.
Yeah, I'm Caitlyn. I'm a registered dietitian. I own Fuel Your Freedom, which is a private practice focused on nutrition counseling here in Fayetteville. For most of my career, bulk of my career, I've always been an eating disorder dietitian. So that's where most of kind of my trainings came from, focused on relationship with food, intuitive eating, trained in a handful of different treatment modalities with a lot of acronyms, but mainly since been transitioning to private practice, I've kind of found a little bit more of a niche in sports nutrition, women's health, in combination with disordered eating.
Great. Thank you so much for coming to chat with me. And I know that you're very interested in Red S, and I'm just kind of curious about how you kind of went in that direction, and then, talk a little bit more about your specialty.
Yeah. So my interest in Red S stemmed actually from more of a personal place. I was always an athlete, always a runner, and always wanted to be quote unquote healthy. And growing up, I would follow, what my coaches would say of like, eating more fruits and vegetables and avoiding certain foods. And I was just under fueling all of high school. And then in college, I just ran collegiately for 1 year and was always dealing with stress fractures. I didn't have a period for 6 years. I had pretty bad anxiety, and just really checked marked all the kind of boxes of symptoms that can come along with Red S. And it was in my master's when I kind of pivoted and decided to go into dietetics. I learned what it was and was like, oh, nobody is talking about this. It makes such a difference in sport performance, overall health, mental health, just all these aspects of life.
What type of runner were you? Cross country?
Yeah, it was long distance.
Okay.
And just as like adolescent, you're growing and developing and require a lot more fuel in addition to adding all that extra endurance.
Yeah. How many stress fractures did you have?
Ooh.
And where were they?
Yeah. I had 4. They were always top of my foot. Yeah.
Like fifth met head?
Oh.
Like your pinky toe?
No. Whatever your index toe was, that's your second metatarsal. Yeah. Yeah, I had one on each foot and then maybe one a little bit higher. But yeah, I have memories of like, I came home from Thanksgiving break my freshman year of cross country. I was limping through the airport. I was like, something is not right. I'm in such pain. And that's when I kind of knew I needed to pivot.
What was the healing time on those? And do you feel because of maybe you had Red S, the healing time was delayed, or delayed at all because you were continuing your sport? What did that kind of look for you from a therapy perspective, I guess? And how does that tie into maybe your nutrition at the time?
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about that?
Healing for my foot?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it took a little bit. I just had to rest. It forced me into taking time off. And at the time, too, I changed colleges, I transferred, and I was kind of forced into practicing more rest and allowing my body that space to heal. It was definitely tricky. And yeah, I don't think adequate nutrition actually came on board until much later. I kind of paused the running, found other sources of movement, because it was much later that I even knew what Red S was. I figured it was just from running too much, or I didn't really have a cause for what was creating all of those.
Yeah.
With the period thing, too, I think it was pretty standard to just start birth control and kind of like Band-Aid of, well, this will give you a period, this will protect your bones. But current research shows that doesn't actually preserve your bone health. And so there's, I think, just bone loss that was happening at that time.
Yeah. And what I think is really interesting in regards to, Red S is they are doing more studies on women in midlife with Red S, right? Because your hormones are changing and all of that. So is there any way that you can tie in perimenopause, Red S, osteoporosis, menopause, all of those things, and how it doesn't just apply to these young female athletes, but it is for women across the lifespan?
Yeah, I think the symptoms can present similarly around hormones, bone health, even metabolism. That can be tricky to kind of distinguish what is what because there is so much overlap. They show up in very similar ways. But But I think people of all walks of life are impacted, and then all body shapes and sizes. I think there can be sometimes a misconception that it only looks in this type of body frame or size. But anyone in any shape, those who may identify with more in a larger body, if they are still not fueling adequately and engaging in high-level activity, they can still be at risk of developing some of those symptoms.
So hormone-wise, what have you learned hormone-wise in like the young female athlete or a woman, but like when someone is struggling with Red S, what is that doing to their hormonal health?
Yeah.
Any ideas on that?
Yeah, it really stems from kind of like the hypothalamus part in your brain. Your body is getting this feedback of, it doesn't necessarily know what's happening, but it's like, we're in a famine. We don't have access to enough energy supply. And it will send signals with a different hormone to reduce estrogen. So we see really low estrogen. We see that impacts kind of that pituitary gland that sends out LH, FSH, so we see that suppressed. So those are kind of the two main things, and then that's why usually periods would get irregular or skipped.
What is your hypothalamus supposed to do in that whole process? Do you know?
Yeah, I think just regulates your hormones.
Okay.
And your metabolism and...
What, you said estrogen drops. Does anything happen to progesterone or testosterone that you know of?
With Red S, I don't believe as much. I know if we were talking more perimenopause, menopause, that's when we can see differences in some of those. But I think estrogen is the main one that plummets with Red S, and then the LH, FSH.
Okay. Interesting. And what are some just tips and tricks that you have for people to try to get adequate nutrients when they're either a female athlete or maybe they're just a woman in midlife? Like, are there any tips you have for people?
Yeah, I think the first one is consistent intake throughout the day. I think for a variety of people, sometimes it's harder to eat earlier, and I see a lot of it happen the last half of the day. But usually a lot of what I work with clients is eating, can we eat within kind of the first hour of waking up just to get our body some source of fuel after that long fasted state of sleeping? And then can we eat about every 2-4 hours after? Some it may be 4 to 5, others it may be 3 to 4. But kind of having that predictability schedule versus sometimes I see, we have a quick protein bar, 3 hours after waking up, and then we do a light salad for lunch, and then we have a big meal for dinner later. But if we can spread that out and have consistent intake throughout the day, and then really prioritize really all the macronutrients, I kind of share basic nutrition education that they all have a different function in our body. One's not necessarily more important than the other. They just all have different roles. And if we can make sure, protein is spread out regularly or getting consistent carbs throughout the day, that can help support.
What are your ideas on, I know it's not one size fit all, but generally, if someone were to come to you and say, hey, I need a simple thing to do. What is a simple way for someone to just try to get those adequate nutrients? You said every 3 to 4 hours. Do you have any cheat sheets or anything that you tell people on how it might work better for them?
Yeah. Usually in sessions, I have a resource that we'll go through because I think food, we often focus so much on fuel and it's so important, but food is there's culture, there's tradition, it's more than just fuel, and I think tailoring it to a person's preferences, taste, culture, all of that is important. And usually with taking kind of the framework of, okay, what are some carbs that, make sense with your lifestyle and the time and bandwidth that you have to spend on this? What are some easy sources of protein, easy sources of fat, plant food? And then we'll look at kind of creating quick lists that can combine them together.
Yeah. What's the quickest and best? Somebody would say, what should I have for a high protein intake if I want a snack? What would you tell them to do?
Oh, see, best, I'm it's whatever you enjoy.
What is your...
What is mine?
Yeah, what would you do?
I feel just carry lots of different nuts, peanut butter, that sort of thing around because it's very versatile, goes with everything, and
When you bring up this, having an organized schedule almost of knowing when you're going to eat or knowing what you're going to eat. And I find for myself where I struggle is I will wake up and I'm trying to get my family ready to get out the door, and I come to work and then it's 2:00 and I've had a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And that's it. And it's because I just have a hard time finding the time to plan, or I'm rushing out the door, or I'm like, oh, that's complicated, or, thinking I'll have a break in my schedule to go get some food, but not really centering my day around making sure I'm getting proper nutrients. So I feel very heard whenever you're saying that. And then also, how do you feel about fasting? I'm not a faster.
Okay.
I fast while I sleep.
Yeah.
But, is that healthy? Is that not healthy? What are the recommendations now on fasting?
Yeah. I think especially in this conversation as we're talking about hormone health, a lot of research shows it impacts our hormones in kind of a negative way, that there's differences. A lot of the research that was done on intermittent fasting was more on men, not as much on women, and they show some differences there. I'm always a component of if it's working for you, great. I think everyone has autonomy to practice whatever diet they feel fits well with them and their lifestyle. But typically my kind of approach with fasting is that I see it kind of as this pendulum swing, at least with a population I work with, of, not having anything for this prolonged period of time, sending this cascade of different biological, psychological changes in your body that then makes you seek out food during that period you're allowed to eat. And then a lot of my clients experience loss of control eating, or feeling like they're binge eating, or feeling like they're going to really simple carbs because their body's like, we just need fuel right now as fast as we can. And so I kind of see it more a pendulum sometimes, which can impact our hormones and metabolism and all those different things.
Right. And I feel my body sometimes will crave just a bagel. It's like, I just want a bagel with some cream cheese on it. It's probably because I'm starving. And my body's like, give me carbs.
Yeah, bodies are smart.
Yeah. I guess one thing that I want to ask, because a lot of people come to me because they want to build strength. So, it's not within my scope to really tell them this is what you should be doing. I'll tell them, make sure you're eating within an hour, 30 minutes to an hour after you work out for optimal muscle protein synthesis. And then also I recommend creatine, and then trying to hit these protein goals. But what advice would you have for these women that are not these young female athletes, but they might be having some of these symptoms of red S, or even just they're wanting to lose weight, they're wanting to gain muscle, but what would you recommend for them to build muscle mass according to what you would say is the best thing to do?
Yeah, I think you need energy to build the muscle mass. You need that to be able to repair your muscles. And so kind of going back to, are we getting adequate nourishment throughout the day? Again, we mentioned splitting up protein. There's a lot of research that shows our body can really only absorb 25 to 40 grams or so at one time. A lot of the extra is just excreted afterwards, or used in a different way. And so that can kind of be like a ballpark goal. That's a large range because, again, it can be individualized, but seeing, okay, most of those meal snacks, can we get around 25, 40 grams or so of protein in combination of the other macronutrients? I'm trying to think, was there another part to the...
No, just about building muscle, losing fat. I think a lot of women in their 40s, 50s, 60s start to notice a different in body composition also. So, I mean, anything you have, any takes you have on that as well?
Yeah. I do see that, at least with a few that I've worked with, in terms of trying to cut calories or lose weight in preparation for that, or as they're going through that. And my kind of approach with just in the field that I'm in is from a health at every size perspective, that health can exist in all body shapes and sizes. There's a really great video called Poodle Science on YouTube, and it's just kind of a easy metaphor that puts together that our health is based on so many other things than just weight. And our healthcare system loves to just weight-centric and focus on that as the end-all, be-all. And so I think I kind of practice this approach that your body will land where it needs to. And we don't have a ton of control over the number on this scale. Despite what short term, we can do some things and change our body. But we know that long term, and again, research supports this, percent of diets don't work because long term, people gain the weight plus some. And that kind of goes back to this, it's called a set point theory, that our bodies kind of have this predisposition place that they to land. It can be changed, but it's just influenced by a lot of genetics, a lot of environment, metabolism, things like that. And so what I see is, these people may lose weight short term, but then long term, your body's still going to try to rebound back to where
that's very interesting.
Was kind of supposed to be. Changes in, I think it goes back, I hear a lot of like calories in versus calories out, and that simplified formula, like we're not robots. Our bodies change in metabolism and hunger hormones and things like that to kind of correct it.
Very interesting. I love that. I love to know that there's like a place where your body kind of wants to be, because I find that a lot of people, say, hey, I play tennis every week. I eat, lots of people eat better than I do, and they say, but I just cannot cut the pounds off. And for me, it's kind of like, it's hard to explain to some people that, you might not be meant to be, you like look like me or look like you're a marathon runner or, and it's like your body kind of has a happy medium also. Because I think a lot of people struggle with, we're all different. We're all different shapes and sizes. We all have different genetics.
Yeah.
And that has an effect on what we look like. Another question that I do have is on bone health. So not only, my business, I would say, is longevity.
Yeah.
So it's not all about you want to be super muscular. It's about like, why are we doing it? Why are we wanting to gain muscle? Well, we want to gain muscle because we want to be able to get up off the floor when we're 85.
Yeah.
But also our bone health. We want our bone health to stay in a good zone so we don't have osteopenia or osteoporosis. So kind of what's your take on bone density, bone health, and how can we optimize that?
Yeah. I think nutrition has a lot to do with it. And there's only so much nutrition can take. There is that natural process that, we do see a reduction in bone density and how quickly it's reabsorbed and stuff as we age. But I think adequate energy, like again, going back to that red S, that if our body's not having to pull, because that's typically what happens in red S, is if there's this imbalance with estrogen, it loses calcium, and then our body is pulling our bone from us. And so if we keep our energy supplies consistent, then we can reduce it almost compounding. So if we also have red S and perimenopause, we would just kind of compound how quickly that bone loss is happening. And so to preserve it, I would think just to have consistent energy that you're meeting your nutrient needs regularly. And then with the strength training too, I think that plays an important role along with the protein.
When you say energy, what are you, like, in your mind, what is like the perfect way to consume energy and fuel for your body? I mean, that's like what your business is called. Yeah, when I say energy too, I mean calories. And I think calories can feel almost like a bad word for some people. There's a lot of fear of them. Right.
But everybody needs them. That's what we're required to have. Every cell in our body needs calories.
Right.
And so as far as strategies of like what that looks like, I practice mostly from like an intuitive eating place, which it takes a while to sometimes get there if that has been something that feels really foreign or different, But again, I think there's a lot of like built-in wisdom that your body has of what you need. And so that's something we kind of walk through in like a bigger picture.
While we're on it,
Okay.
we're on intuitive eating,
Yeah.
I want to ask you about, because people always ask me, what's your diet? And I tell them, I feel I'm an intuitive eater. I eat whatever I feel eating.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, that might be a burger. Oftentimes it is a burger. Or sometimes it's ice cream.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or sometimes it's Lucky Charms. I don't know. So tell me what you mean by intuitive eating. And yeah, just for the general public, like, what does that mean?
Yeah. So intuitive eating is based kind of off these 10 principles. I forget when it was started. It's been multiple decades or so. But there's a lot of research that then has followed that has support kind of this style adaptation of eating, supports longevity, supports reduction in chronic disease and illness, more than what we see with like different like really rigid diet plans. And so it's kind of this approach that we use both our emotions out of our brain and our logic side in terms of we pay attention to our interoceptive awareness cues of when we're hungry. We respond. We don't ignore that. We pay attention when we're feeling satisfied and full. Kind of exist on a continuum. But with that comes kind of some harder work for people if they feel like they're coming into it with a lot of food rules. They feel like there's a lot of internal food policing, or maybe there's external food policing that they grew up with. There's a handful of different things that kind of come alongside. And as I approach it, I kind of talk about like most babies are born, I would say everyone, kids are born as intuitive eaters. We don't overthink it when like a newborn is crying because they just ate 2 hours ago. Like, oh, they must need more. Or, you might feed them and they only take an ounce. You're like, they're done, I guess. But there's kind of this fluctuation of hunger and fullness. And as an adult of an intuitive eater, I notice that too. Some days I'm starving and I can't get full. And then other days I'm like, not as much of an appetite. But for a lot, in a very diet culture society, those intuitive eating kind of guidelines get taken away because we start leaning on external rules of this diet we're following, or this we're pursuing weight loss, and so we're ignoring hunger or X, Y, and Z.
What if I just really, my intuition is telling me I need to drink a Coke right now. Like, that's different, right? Like, or do we drink the Coke? Or, because it's not a great source of nutrition, right?
Yeah.
So what's the difference between having the urge or desire to have something and like being like, I think I need a Coke, and like actual intuitive eating? Is there a difference?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's where it is individualized. Of like, it can exist in different ways in terms of, okay, a Coke is just a Coke. It's glucose. Your body can still use it. Logically, you might be, I'm deciding to pause on Coke because I know I feel better if I drink a smoothie. Or I know I feel better if I just, like, get some more water intake. And other times, you're like, no, a Coke, like, brings me some joy, and that's something that I choose to have. It doesn't make me bad. There's not, kind of exists, there's not good food and bad food. Like, food is neutral. It doesn't have any moral value.
Yeah.
And once we can kind of take that away, for a lot of people, it just becomes, okay, sometimes I choose this, other times I choose this based on what I feel my body needs in the moment.
Yeah.
How I feel when I have that.
I don't want to open up a can of worms or anything, but ARFID?
Yeah.
Okay. Can we talk about that for
Yeah.
a minute?
What do you know about ARFID?
Not a ton,
Okay.
but sometimes I've been, do I have that?
Okay.
Where I kind of get a little bit grossed out by some food, or it's too hard to put it together. But if somebody was having difficulty with consuming nutrition, do you have any just easy tips and tricks for them to just like make it easier? Is that Is that out of like, is that okay to talk about in this conversation?
100%.
Okay.
So ARFID stands for Avoidant Restrictive Food Intake Disorder. And I feel like it's gaining more popularity because it's a newer add to the DSM-5 where psychological diagnoses exist. And it doesn't just exist with people who may identify with ARFID, but like eating feels like a chore sometimes. It feels hard and
yeah. Does everybody feel that way?
I think so. I think I often hear that. Well, it just feels chore. I think most people, it's a lot to fuel our bodies consistently on top of other life responsibilities and
Yeah.
other things. As far as like easy, quick ways, I do have a easy, low effort meal prepping thing on my website, a guide. Because again, I think it's so individualized. I think if we can always just tailor it to the individual person of, okay, what are your always foods? What are your sometimes foods? What are your never foods?
Right.
If we're really running into, there's very little we're working with as far as variety. We're at some risk of nutrient deficiencies. Maybe we're doing some more like strategic exposures and working on actually bringing in more variety. For others, it may just be more strategy of, okay, how can we get these things in different ways with regular meals and snacks.
So is that something that someone could go on your website, and is that a free guide?
Yeah.
So they could access that really easily.
Yeah.
Okay.
I am not a person that actually loves to cook. I probably don't spend more than 15 minutes ever on a meal. And so that's my strategy of also feeding my family and self. If it's going to take more than 10 minutes, I'm probably out. So I want something that is simple, low energy being the brain space. It doesn't take a lot of effort to do.
What's an example of that? Give me 2 examples of a dinner that.
Yeah. Our favorite right now is naan pizza. So you buy the naan from Sam's. We keep it in our freezer. And then the way we mix it up is sometimes we do homemade pesto on it. Sometimes we do Alfredo. Sometimes we do red sauce. And then we put it on the grill. Or sometimes we do the oven.
Delicious. That is a great idea.
But it takes 5 minutes and it's really fast.
Yeah.
And again, you cover kind of all the nutrition groups there.
And it's not just like a turkey sandwich.
Yeah.
Or a grilled cheese or throwing everything in a pot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, we need to talk about RED-S, what it actually is. What does it stand for? Can you tell me?
Yes. So RED-S is relative energy deficiency in sport.
What are some symptoms that one might be experiencing that could correlate with RED-S? Say perimenopause, menopause.
Yeah. I think reduce performance. Maybe you're noticing you're just kind of hitting a plateau. Maybe you have been training for a little bit and you're noticing your kind of sport performance is just plateauing. Fatigue, feeling exceptionally tired, feeling like it takes an exceptional amount of time to recover from training. Other things we might see higher anxiety. You might see more kind of, I call it food noise, but thoughts around food popping up. Again, our bodies are kind of smart.
Like what type of thoughts are we talking about?
Yeah. So for a lot of people, I'm thinking about food a lot of the day. Or I am having a hard time thinking about other things that's not my next meal. That's your body telling you you need more food. A lot of the time. Other things that can pop up as far as symptoms, again, this can kind of go, what is RED-S, what is the perimenopause side, but if you're noticing really irregular periods, that could be either or. Low libido can go into both places. Yeah, there's some great images online that show there's a whole cascade, 10 plus things or so that can be impacted by this.
Wow. Is there anything else that you want to add to this conversation, or you feel just women in general need to hear or need to know from a food perspective? Like, if we're doing okay, like encouragement, any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think it would just be around focusing on, I know with your built program, you're really focused on like preserving muscle mass, adding muscle mass, preserving bone health, the longevity side. And I think that's so powerful, a focus on what other aspects of health do we have a little bit more in our control versus a number on the scale.
Right.
That like if we can, which is hard, but like if we can put more of our effort and brain space into that and seeing what it's like to, what is it for that number not to have as much significance and to have freedom from
that. And a lot of the times I tell people, it's like, people want objective numbers, right? They want the scale, they want the measurements, they want the grams or all of that kind of stuff. But what I really want people to take away is, how do you feel? Like, how do you feel up here?
Yeah.
How do you feel in your body? Are you totally depleted? If you are, it's not just the working out that's causing it. It could be we're not getting the appropriate nutrients, we're not getting enough sleep,
Yeah.
We've got high stress levels. There's all of these variables that go into it, which is why I wanted to talk with you, because, I think diet has a huge role in how we're feeling every day of our life. Like, not just perimenopause and menopause, or if we have red S, but it really affects how you feel overall. So, thank you so much.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
I think those are all of my questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
This is fun.